A very good morning to you here in the Netherlands and good afternoon to you in Indonesia. Hopefully you can hear me well and I'm speaking loud enough because I was just asked to speak up a little bit. My name is Klamer. I'm from the Hague University of Applied Sciences. But with me today there are also two lecturers from Inholland University of Applied Sciences, also in location Hague. Maybe they can just introduce themselves and their names and their function, and then I will take over.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Reinhard. My name is Tom Funke. I'm a lecturer here at the Hague Inholland University of Applied Sciences, working for the Department of Business Studies.
Jeroen Trischijn. I'm also in The Hague, located, working with Twan at Inholland Business Studies.
And the way that we have divided this session is that I will focus a bit on the general topic of COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning. And then we have some colleagues from the Netherlands and also from Indonesia who will share their project and give you a concrete example of online collaboration. The Indonesian professor, we just did not see him there yet, but he can introduce himself perhaps in the chat and otherwise later. Is that fine? Okay. Can I also see my slides? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Then we can start with the more formal part as well. All right. There we go. So next slide, please. This was just the intro slide. So this is a bit the agenda for today, introducing collaborative online international learning, implementation of COIL at the Hague University of Applied Sciences, and then the project from Inholland with their Indonesian partner, experiences from both sides. So we want to hear from that as well. And then we have some starting questions, or we will just ask you some questions for the discussion, mostly for the online audience. Next slide, please. So this is to introduce myself, so you know who you are, who is speaking right now. And I have three different functions at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. One is that I'm the virtual collaboration coordinator. So we manage about 55 different COIL projects within the university that actually has a larger reach than the amount of students we send on exchange. So we are well on the way to make it a more inclusive approach in internationalization, and COIL is one of those activities that we do. Next to that, I'm involved in global learning, and I'm also, that's the research group, and I'm still a senior lecturer for 1 day a week in facility management, also to just keep that connection with the classroom. My drivers for COIL, and I just mentioned these quickly, because I think it can have a lot of benefits for your students in your curriculum. And the first one is that you get diverse perspectives. Today we have the perspective of Indonesia and the Netherlands, but you could also do projects with Indonesia and other countries, or Netherlands and others. And not only there are national differences, but of course also the subjects can be quite different as well. Next to that, it's real collaboration, because you let your students talk to each other, you let them meet, you let them work on assignments, And the one COIL might be very intense and the other one might be a bit more intercultural exchange and dialogue, but that's okay because it might fit that student population. It is flexible, so you can adapt it to those different curriculums. You can also learn something as a lecturer, and that's always nice, because as a lecturer, you are never done learning, but sometimes you're in front of your class and you might think you are done. But then with online international collaborations with other countries, you gain a lot of new insights. So you learn something from what is going very well in Indonesia, and you might take that also to your other aspects in your class. And then finally, my driver is also to develop quality in all these projects. And you don't do that alone, you do that with different stakeholders. So you try to involve research, you try to involve educational advisors, and you work together to make projects also better, so it doesn't just stay at the lecturer's level, but also is built up a bit more through the university. Next slide, please. So what is COIL? Perhaps it's good to frame it a little bit. We see it as a shared syllabus teaching approach as part of internationalization at home. And internationalization at home means purposeful integration for international activities for all students. So you're not trying just the ones that want internationalization, but also others. Also you try to make that in the curriculum so that it's formalized. It's related to learning outcomes, for example. COIL connects students and professors in different countries for collaborative projects. And how does it work? Well, it falls a bit under the social constructivist educational approach. But this is more a definition, and I'll try to get a bit more into the details of how COIL actually works in the next slides. So maybe the next slide. Here we go. This is a very simple picture. So you have two teachers, two cohorts of students, two institutions, two or more cultures, and two languages. And they together try to design a shared course, shared content, co-teaching, collaborative work, and online work. And also, if you go to the next slides, you see a bit more of a detail of what that project could look like. So you might start with preparing students, that you think about having them in a classroom setting, talking to them, telling them how you're going to collaborate with the other students in a different country, and perhaps also discussing some thoughts that they have with that, because it's good to just get them aware. Cultural readiness is a part of that, and it's also important to look at individual expectations, because students have very different motivations for doing an online project together with another country. Some would like it a lot. Some would feel something anxious maybe about their language capability, and some also maybe are not looking for it because they thought they would go to a university to just stay in their local environment, and then you give them something different. You then start with what we call icebreakers usually, and that means that you do some kind of introduction activity where people can start to relate a little bit more to each other. And that means, for instance, an activity that you describe your favorite view. So you say, well, or you describe your day, or you find two things or three things in common with each other. So it can be very simple, it can be quick, but it's important. We find that we start with the relationship first before all the formal tasks come, because otherwise that relationship is not strong enough to really start that collaboration. So normally if you have people in your classroom, that relationship goes a bit more automatic. And if it's online, you need to actually manage it sometimes a bit more as a lecturer. You then have these activities that actually foster collaboration. These can be discussions, so online discussions, but it can also be assignments which are more interdependent. And that means that the students really need each other to work together. And an example that we have done is, for example, in the program of communication management, where students in communication management worked with students in healthcare in South Africa. And the students in communication would need to make a campaign for, at that time, how to deal with COVID for the local setting in South Africa, for which they needed the local setting of the cultures there. So the students from South Africa learned something about making a media campaign, and the students from the Netherlands learned a lot about the local healthcare and what actually would work communication-wise in that country there. Yeah. You then have your collaborative tasks and your outcomes and assessment. And the level of assessment really differs, because that's something that lecturers have to discuss together. For example, in the Netherlands, we say if you want to have a very good grade, we might say the 10 is for God, the 9 is for the teacher, and we start at 8, and 80% is then the highest level, which is very different than even our neighboring country, Germany, which starts with a 1, which is then considered the highest, but almost 50% of students will get that grade. So you have to have nice discussions with your colleagues about, well, what does it mean when something is good, or when something is excellent, or when something is actually failed. So it's not just that everyone automatically might pass, right? And we then talk a bit about, of course, the assessment, the evaluation. The reflection is a very important part of that. And that means that the students try to write down or discuss or understand the process that they are going through also individually. So whilst COIL is mostly group work, there is also an individual learning process that takes place. Yeah. Next slide, please. So I'll start a little bit more with why do we actually do this and why it might be interesting for you as well. And then I'll focus a bit on how we do it, and I will later leave the what part up to my colleagues from Inholland and from Indonesia to share. So let's start with why. The next slide, please. Here we go. This is a bit more complicated slide that shows some different reasons why COIL can be a good idea. And first of all, it says something about the vision for the European education area. And there, if you look at those arrows, it talks about green and digital, which it is. It's more green than traveling. It is, of course, digital because you're working on digital skills. Inclusion and gender. And you can make COIL inclusive. You can make it compulsory for more students. But that doesn't mean that every project has that aspect. And it also talks about quality. We need to try to invest in quality of education. So this is very much big picture, and then you have the different contexts that take place there as well. We are dealing with a global context that is not very positive at this time, and that students also sometimes need to be aware of. There is a national and regional context, so whatever happens in the Netherlands or West Europe or in Indonesia, that will affect somewhat the mood of the people that are participating. You have your local context of your university and what is happening there. And then, of course, you have your institutional context and what's going on there. So it narrows down to all the surroundings that have an influence on the project. Next slide, please. And this source, as you can tell, is from 2014. So it's already quite old, but I think it still is quite valuable for where we stand now and why we are doing education in this time and day. And what you see here is that it says, well, we should create competitive advantage in the future. And perhaps now, 10 years later, you can say we are in the future of 2014. Through networks, teams, collaboration, and we should ask students how to deal with that. So you want to try to push them, perhaps to explore more, to try out more, rather than having classes where you stand in front and you explain everything that you want. They can probably find that stuff now, not only in books themselves or online, but probably in AI tools as well. So the next slide. And we asked also some people, so why do you do these international projects? And the difference, there are some differences from what you can see here, but what is shared is that people are looking for authentic international experiences. So they don't really want a case study or a video, but they want to talk to real people and probably want to talk to people their same age, their peers somewhere else, where they usually discover that they have more in common than what separates them. There's a lot that separates, but there's also a lot of the same. It's about connections and about collaboration as well. And that collaboration is, of course, essential in that acronym, Collaborative Online International Learning. So next slide. This is, that was a bit of the why, and this is a bit of the question, what do we do in the Hague University of Applied Sciences? And it's important to see this picture, and you might think, oh, that's a lot of projects, 48 projects where students are involved. But to realize that perhaps 8 years ago, it was just 5 projects. So there has been a tremendous growth in online projects. And we've now come to realize that it's good to have some central strategy around that. It's good to have more people around that involved. But it's still a journey, a learning journey also for our university. We are working with 32 different partners, and we've also done one project with LSPR, Communication and Business in Jakarta. And there is one project starting next month related to living labs with Airlangga University. And there are 2 projects that are starting, or they are still planning to start in next year, 2025, with Universitas Indonesia. And they're in quite different subject areas. So one was more on communication and business, that was with Jakarta, with the LSPR. One is much more about sustainable waste management, that's with Airlangga. And another ones are either at communication media design and also in law. So there are quite different programs, different projects, but also going on with Indonesia. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah. If we zoom a bit more in, because we've had that larger context, we've had the institution, and now you look at your curriculum, it is good to realize if you have 4 years, that's what we have in the Netherlands, 4-year bachelor program, where actually is your project located? What is happening before that? What is happening after? And is it one-off, or do you want to repeat it? And usually we see that COIL projects are repeated and improved over time because lecturers like to work together. Yeah. They might say it's good for their students, which it is also, but it's also good for the lecturers because they enjoy having that international partnership and working on that and improving their teaching, which they are into anyway. Yeah. The next slide. Now I'll try to go in a little bit into the implications of such a project and how we implement that in TUAS. And the first letter is the C of collaboration. So if you look at collaboration, then it means that students work on assignments from 2 or more universities. You have sometimes a project that involves 5 or 6 universities, but most often we say, well, let's just look first at a one-to-one partnership, because that's already complicated enough. Yeah. It means that it's designed by both universities, so you're really trying to learn also what is happening in the other lecture, in the other countries' curriculum. What are they focused on? What do they find important? And the third point as well, often we say the first COIL is actually between the lecturers. So how they are collaborating is usually mirrored by how the students collaborate. I've had very good starting sessions with, let's say, South Africa as well. And there the students have a direct WhatsApp approach to their students. And that's then also repeated in the way the project goes. They were coaching also some Dutch students, and they would WhatsApp them directly, why weren't you here? And can you hand in your assignment? And this was something that Dutch students were not so used to But that's intercultural collaboration taking place. It is dealing with differences in also educational systems, in grading. I just made an example about that already. And those assignments that actually need to work together and people need to work together. This important part is that it's of course virtual collaboration, and that's different than offline collaboration. If you look at these tools here, this list of 5 aspects, I find them to be quite true in these international projects. So even though we have a fantastic IT setup here today, so congrats, winner, sometimes in your classroom, it might not work with connecting to Indonesia, even though you planned it well and you have a supporting IT department. Sometimes your university also has an IT department that might not support international projects so well because they focus a lot on their own tools. So in a way, as a lecturer, you tend to need to be flexible in which tools you use. And you are, in that sense, your own IT department. You spend more time, and that's really related to this collaboration as well, in building and maintaining relationships. Because a lot of the offline, what you do next to the coffee or what you do when you walk around in your class or when you talk to your students, you don't do that automatically if you're online. So you need to try to foster that collaboration, and that's key to actually doing the rest of the tasks. The second part is the online. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. You already went there, so yeah. The primary way of communication is through online tools, of course, because it's virtual. So you're working through online tools, and there are so many online tools these days that it's sometimes a journey to find the right tools. At The Hague, we try to make a distinction between the tools for the whole group and the tools that you advise the students to collaborate with if they are meeting one-to-one or in small groups, which is usually more an advice, because as a lecturer, you don't then automatically see what is going on, especially if students are more at home than they are in the classroom. Yeah. What do you provide online? Choose the right tools for the right purpose, and that sounds very logical, and it also is, but sometimes you have to get there by trial and error. One of the first COIL projects I did, we made this into a student assignment. Tell us which tool is the best for online meetings for you. Tell us which tool is the best for chatting with you. And the assignment was try 5. Try 5, make a small report, and then tell us which one you chose. So without knowing it, they are actually working on their own collaboration and trying also for us what actually might really work between the different countries. You have to consider usage, privacy, familiarity, and in this, you find also there are large international differences. It might be so that the students in another country don't have access to internet with their own mobile phone, or they don't want to use that because it's more expensive. So they want to be on campus. It can also be that students live on campus anyway, and that they use those tools that are there. In the Netherlands, I found it helpful. We have internet on campus, but to ask the students to sometimes do it from their home, because they usually have a bedroom. They use it in COVID time for all their education, and it's sometimes easier for them to chat to other people internationally than traveling to campus, having a lot of buzz, trying to connect maybe 100 people at the same time online, and then sometimes for some people it doesn't work. So you then don't need to have all this traffic. Next slide. These are some of the tools that we've used, and you might recognize them. I think the main ones that we use nowadays for the online collaboration are Zoom and Teams, depending on the countries you work with. And for Canvas tools, we use either Canva, Padlet, Miro board. Those are the different ones that show a flow of the projects and where students can hand in their assignments directly to both universities. Because otherwise you get that you have to hand it in here and there, and then you never really know where everything is. So you don't see also what students are producing. If you have questions about those tools or you want to see some examples, contact me after the session. I think my email address is there and I can send you an example as well. It was more difficult to put it in the PowerPoint. Next slide. Yeah. The third aspect is, of course, that it's international. And international means intercultural differences, and they are there. Sometimes I speak to lecturers who are teaching, let's say, in a very scientific field, and they might say, well, in our field, there are no international or intercultural differences. And then I say, okay, then just don't do it for that reason, but do it for working on the subject, because those professors there are also specialized in your subject. So start like that. And then afterwards, they usually tell me what was really interesting was the intercultural differences. Yeah, so you need to talk to people from the different academic disciplines in the way to see what motivates them. Time zone differences, we notice it today at 9 o'clock in the morning here, and I think 2, 3. Yeah, so that's quite good for us. And also for you, but if we would do it somewhere later in the day, it might be more challenging. You have teaching and learning differences, you have school system differences, I think I mentioned some of that already, but you also have profession differences. So what is I teach in facility management, what is a facility manager in another country? What does he do? How is that profile actually made? How do they look at trends related to that? And you might take a topic as sustainability, and in the Netherlands we have a very kind of clear view, I think, on what we want to do with sustainability, and it's more or less the same in different universities. You see the different SDGs everywhere, but the situation will be very different in another country, and it's good to take that into account. Next slide. Also, it's important to know your own strengths and weaknesses. So my apologies if I seem direct in my explanations. It's part of my Dutchness, perhaps. We sometimes assume our culture is better than others, and you see that if you talk to students and you ask them, well, what do you know about this country? And they might only know something from their holidays, and they might say, well, people are poorer there and therefore this. Yeah. So understand that your own culture first, and if you have the slides, you can click on the link, and then you might find a nice video about international students talking about the Dutch culture. Next slide. It's also important to know your different models. Here you see Lewis, you see Hofstede, you see Meyer, Bennett, Hall. These are general intercultural models, and they can help you to explain some of the national differences that you might encounter, although you should not typify that for every individual. It's good to have at least that discussion, especially if your students are not that used to working internationally yet. Next slide. The final letter, and I'm almost done with my part of the presentation, and then I'll hand it over to my colleagues from Inholland, is about learning. And in the end, that's of course why we are in education, and also why this session is called education. In the end, you want learning to happen. And it's good to try to think of what are the intended learning outcomes. And then I don't mean endlessly defining the learning outcome, but really having a discussion with your partner. Well, what do we want our students to learn from this? And that might be different, but it's at least good to know then what those differences are. Yeah. What is the level of learning? And how about reflecting? Yeah? What can you learn? What about the role of the individual learning process? Take that into account as well. Next slide. Okay. We use this model to help our education and to also help this discussion, where we try to link the expected learning development. So have lecturers talk first about that, identify one or two that are similar, And then think about, okay, well, what are the activities that can relate to this? What are the deliverables? What is actually needed for input, videos or lectures or whatnot? And hopefully you can also say something about that future impact, which is sometimes a bit more difficult because it's in the future. But we have seen that students who participate in these processes in general have a bit more positive viewpoint towards the other culture, are a bit more inclined to work internationally or to do things internationally. And also for some students, we've also seen that they say, I thought it would be like a holiday, it was not easy, I don't really like it. And that's also good for students to realize that before they go somewhere for a year or they do something else. Next slide. This one we'll leave a little bit to later as well, but perhaps you can already think about these kind of questions. Perhaps you can discuss or think about which of the letters of COIL do you think is really important. Is there one more important than the other? It's a bit of a trick question, of course. Is COIL only an alternative to physical mobility? Is physical mobility still the benchmark that we should go for? Or is it perhaps only for a select few and is online maybe much more for everyone? That is something to maybe think about. And if you make it very personal and you are thinking about setting up a COIL, what kind of challenges do you think you face when you want to get involved in online collaboration? Yeah. So I'll now give the floor to Tom and his colleague, Jeroen, my apologies, Jeroen, who will discuss a concrete project with Indonesia.
Well, thanks a lot. As I said, my name is Tom Franken. I work for business studies at Inholland University. And in business studies, we've had a wonderful first experience with a COIL that we set up with our Indonesian partner, USK. And Professor Samadi will later on talk from the Indonesian perspective on this COIL. It was a first time we developed this, and we're going to talk you through what our objectives were, how we experienced it, and after that we will hear from Sam how his students and his colleagues saw this first time experience. Next slide, please. When we went into this project, we had a few goals. At the time, we were working on a new curriculum for business studies, and Jeroen and I, together with a lot of other colleagues, were developing a new curriculum for the second year. And the theme of that second semester, the second year, was international value chains. How to make those value chains more sustainable, link them to the SDGs, and try to find out in which way you can better organize those supply chains, those international supply chains. Now, that's a very broad subject. We were trying to develop a whole semester course. And of course, there's an international aspect to that question, to that topic. And we came up with the idea to think of a warm-up project for this second semester, a warm-up project in which the students would experience, first of all, an international context, and secondly, have a first-time experience with international collaboration. Now, for Inholland University, internationalization of the curriculum is very important. We do our best to motivate students to broaden their horizons. That can be done in different ways. Of course, there is study abroad, but also within the curriculum, there's a lot of time spent on dealing with international matters and subjects. But we were looking for a way to have a lot of students participate in an international experience. Because this project and this COIL idea, we also developed with a few Canadian partners at the same time. And in total, we managed to get over 600 students participating in this particular COIL. also as a way to have students experience for the first time how it is to collaborate together with international students. And we hope, of course, that with this COIL experience, more students in Holland and our Indonesian partners will be interested in maybe studying abroad or participating in future projects like this. Next slide, please. So our goal was to have a project that would be interesting for our students, that would help them understand the broader theme of their second semester curriculum. And we were looking, of course, for international partners. Now there's a lot of people within Inholland University that have large international experience. And the contact with USK was made through a colleague of mine that works for our Amsterdam campus, Erik Hendricks, who had already collaborated with USK on several other projects. So we formed two teams, headed by Jeroen, my colleague, that you will hear later, and Professor Samadi of USK. And we had our first contact way before the summer of last year. For your information, the project was carried out in February this year, but we really started preparing and having our first contacts in May last year. The first contacts, were spent really getting to know each other. We spent a lot of time in Zoom. We chose Zoom as a platform also to carry out the COIL, which worked fine, by the way. I must say that for us it was a first-time experience with Zoom, but I'm quite enthusiastic about this particular platform. I personally like it better than Microsoft Teams. It's more flexible, I would say. And of course, as Rainer pointed out, in the first meetings, it was really about getting to know each other, getting to know the curriculum of the students, getting to know each other, and also trying to align the objectives that both parties had with this online collaboration. Now, of course, you have always a challenge that we have second-year students in business studies, whereas on the other side we had students in agriculture, also with a business side to it, but students from a different background with different knowledge. But I think in the end we managed to come up with a program for the COIL that was interesting for both parties, for both types of students. So we had to define the goals of this collaboration, and the goals were basically two. First of all, have an international experience, getting to know a different culture, working together with foreign students. That was important to us. And secondly, get more knowledge about international value chains, and mostly about the different points of view that one could have about making those supply chains more sustainable. Coming from a different culture, coming from a different economic background, points of view can differ. And we thought it was really important for our students to realize those differences. So we chose a particular supply chain that is important for the trade between the Netherlands and Indonesia. We chose palm oil, we chose the value or supply chain of palm oil as a subject for the students to do their research on. But in total, we had 4 meetings, and the first meeting, as Rainer pointed out, was really about getting to know each other. They didn't speak about the topic themselves. So in the months before we started the COIL, we had almost every 2 weeks, we spent a few hours together online discussing what the different assignments could be, what would be interesting for the students, what type of background material we should provide to them, the level of technicality of those background materials. And I think that was it was very important to have a lot of draft proposals that both sides could read and see whether our students and the Indonesian students would clearly understand what was expected from them. And a lot of the drafts were sent back and forth using Zoom, using email, and we made amendments to that. And finally, we were able to come with a proposal that we also tested with our own students, because we wanted to find out whether they would understand what we expected from them. So the testing part was very important. We just gave the materials that we developed together to a group of Dutch and a group of Indonesian students and had them talk about it to see whether improvements could be made, whether everything was clear. Because that is always the challenge. You think of a project and then the question is, do the students understand what the goal of the project is? Next slide, please. As I said, we spent many hours on Zoom, bi-weekly meetings. Sometimes there were more people involved in the meeting. There's more people from Inholland, different teachers from the USK joined the meetings, but we had a core team of developers, of teachers that we spent most time with. For us, it was also a first-time experience with the COIL. We tested the COIL before the students tested it. And I must say, I had no prior experience in working with Indonesia, but I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, I must say. One of the things I learned personally, and that's a typically Dutch thing, is that I need to be patient, that I need to take time, that we took ample time to develop the project. That would be one of the key pieces of advice I would give you. Take many months to prepare, because sometimes for various reasons you need more time than you think. But looking back now on also on the preparation period of the COIL, I think it was very wise not to be too impatient to sometimes have a meeting where you would just have the goal of understanding each other better without having always a concrete result at the end. And you can work like this if you take plenty of time and you are willing to meet frequently, on a frequent basis. So yeah, this is us participating in Zoom. We had a lot of fun together. We got to know many more things about each other than we would otherwise have done. And I think the platform really works really well. Also the IT, I must say, on our side, the IT sometimes failed. And that was something that we were constantly worried about. What will happen when we try to connect 600 students together? Will the IT work? Will the IT be able to handle this? Next slide, please. Well, after many months of preparations, we came up with a COIL program that consisted of 4 online meetings, and with the help of the Indonesian embassy in the Netherlands, we made an introduction video where the education attaché of the Indonesian embassy in the Netherlands spoke a few welcome words to the participating students, and us as developers and teachers did some explanation of the project. We came up with background literature for each of the meetings, and a one-pager telling students how they should prepare, what was expected from them during the meeting, and mostly also, that's very important, what the expected outcome should be. So we try to be as clear as possible for each meeting, trying to inform them in simple English. That's also something we spent a lot of time on. What words should we use so that all the students understand than the expected outcome. Now, of course, the students were very excited. For them, it was also new, and the semester just started, so we explained to them why we organized this COIL for them. We tried to prepare them for that, but in the end, it's a jump into the cold water for them. I don't know if that's a correct expression, but well, they were very excited and they didn't know what to expect. But we just went for it, and well, Jeroen will talk about that later on. I think that the majority of students really had a very enjoyable experience. They didn't expect that when they started. Next slide, please. Here's on the slide you see an impression of the project itself, students working on their project. Here you see all the students together in the room, and the slide on top of that shows one group of Dutch students with a group of Indonesian students working on the cultural differences. We expect them to come up with a joint product at the end of each meeting. In the first meeting, it was mapping out the cultural differences, economic differences between the Netherlands and Indonesia. We provided them with simple one-pagers where everything was explained, what is expected from meeting 2 in this case, and what they should hand in, how they should prepare, etc. They spoke about SDGs, what challenges do they see, what is their point of view on the different SDGs that are affected by the different supply chains. Now, we chose palm oil, but we could have chosen other supply chains as well. Very interesting, and I think a very good preparation for our students as well for the larger semester project, where they have to carry out an assignment, a research assignment for a real Dutch company with an international supply chain, helping them to improve on the SDG outcomes. On the right, you see a snapshot from the introduction video that we recorded. We're very grateful that the embassy wanted to collaborate with us. Next slide, please. Looking back on the preparation period itself, a few things I already mentioned them. Take your time. Language, of course, can be a problem. The Dutch have a habit of speaking very rapidly when they speak English, not realizing that they have a very strong accent very often. So that goes for both sides. That's why I think it's also always very important to put things down in writing so people can read it back and see if this is what we discussed. And some people prefer to read. So written communication is also important alongside the oral communication in Zoom. And as I said before, the testing with students, not only testing the IT system, but also testing what you think is a clear project. Is it clear to the students as well? Because they have a very different perspective, certainly when they're from very different backgrounds. So I would, that would be a piece of advice, a tip to really try and test it with maybe several times with your own students. Next slide, please. Now, as for the COIL itself, the 4 online meetings that we have with USK, I give the word to Jeroen.
Good morning, everybody. Jeroen from Inholland. I'll share with you some experience that we had in the preparation of the COIL We call it COIL in this environment. For us, it was 4 meetings in preparation of a semester work that had the same topic, international supply chain. The main purpose of us working or us setting up the meetings with Indonesian students, as we did with Canadian students, was to, in 2 weeks' time, have a number of meetings for the students to get a feel for the challenges of having those international meetings. It would contain language difficulties, language challenges, that's a given. But what they did not realize so much is that how do you cope with time differences? How do you cope with cultural differences? And that would have been an experience that we saw coming. We gave the students, say, a sizable task to talk about the value chain of palm oil. Tom alluded to that, and the SDG aspects on the value chain from a Dutch and from an Indonesian perspective. That in itself is a huge challenge, and what we anticipated was we have to give them a task for a talking topic, but really our goal was for the students to go through the difficulties of setting up meetings, go through the interaction of getting to know people from a different country and different culture, and having really that cultural experience in only the 4 meetings that we scheduled. So the umbrella, the storyline was value chain, palm oil, and SDGs, but that's a heavy topic to even talk amongst ourselves about. They had that umbrella, but really it was about getting to know each other, sharing information on a personal level, having fun while talking on a topic. Even though we chose palm oil, I think we considered that palm oil, from our perspective as educators, has many topics to it. And if you include palm oil and SDGs, then you can come up with all sorts of, say, global dilemmas with that. And realizing that we gave that topic to students with a Dutch perspective and students with an Indonesian perspective, but we told both groups that put yourselves into the other's shoes so that you are not automatically judgmental about something, realizing, for example, from a Dutch perspective, that your Indonesian colleague, their family may be dependent upon or working in the industry. So you really need to get closer before you become judgmental. So even though the topic is heavy, they did learn quite a few things from each other, but they did, we sort of had to tell them to treat the topic with respect for both sides. Next slide, please. So we talked about language, and obviously language is a topic that both students from Indonesian and Dutch side needed to get their arms around. But it was also about just practical things about the time differences. You mentioned that earlier. Some students would automatically adapt to the time differences and give up their, say, free evening or free morning to facilitate that meeting. We also had, as you heard mentioned before, collaboration with Canada, a similar, if not bigger, time differences, where students really needed to get out of their comfort zone of a 9-to-5 working day, to facilitate the meetings in other time zones. That was a learning themselves. I think as a takeaway from the students, they were now familiarizing themselves with people in other countries, in different cultures and different time zones, and they got much more appreciation for the differences and become more sensitive to what would be important to them as Dutch students versus would be important for Indonesian students. Last comment was when I again meet the students that went through this program, they would all remember it. Some still have connections with social media with the students that they work with. So it goes beyond that 2 weeks time frame, and some interaction. It really builds their future. Next slide. From a teacher's perspective, lessons learned. Twan talked about, we really spent quite a bit of time to get familiar with Samadi and their working environment and their needs to set up something like the COIL that we're talking about. A lot of time, say, not wasted time, but quite a bit of time was spent to get familiar with each other. And I should really emphasize to everybody that is going to start a program like this, you have to take quite a bit of time. We had some difficulties, some topics about how do we score the efforts of the students in points, in ECs. We, at the end of the day, chose for the structure that the 2 weeks time and the participation in those 2 weeks was a mandatory aspect as part of their semester project. We did not award it individual points for the effort, but it made it a mandatory aspect. One of the largest challenges I think that we had was comparing the project with Indonesia, comparing that with Canada. With the Indonesians, we said we're going to have 4 meetings, and it's going to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's scheduled for the students on the Dutch side as well as on the Indonesian side. For the Canadian project, we chose a different route, and we said in those 2 weeks' time, you will set up your meetings, and you're free to choose the time as long as you have your meetings. That is a freedom that we are used to in the Netherlands, maybe, but it does create quite a bit of difficulty in the good execution. So even though it gives the students the freedom and they may like that, there's all sorts of technical and schedule difficulties to cope with. With Indonesia, we had set days and set times for the meetings, and that works quite well, and as a matter of fact, much more easier for us as guiders of the process to run that easily. So that's the last comment. Next slide. Open for questions, I think it is. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Indonesian partner.
Somebody, Sam.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. Good morning for the Netherlands audience and good afternoon for Indonesian audience. First of all, I would like to thank you very much to invite me, one of the speaker for the Week of Indonesia, Netherlands Education and Research. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Samadi. Actually, I'm the lecturer at the Animal Science Department, Universitas Syahkuala, and also the former dean for the Agriculture Faculty. That's why I involved this project because Eric is our partner before with Inholland University. And also, I'm very happy also to be joined for the presentation today about the collaboration online international learning. So actually, at the beginning, maybe some of you don't know where Universitas Syahkuala is. That's why at the beginning, I would like to introduce a little bit about our university. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, Syahkuala University is already 63 years old. This is in Banda Aceh, Indonesia, with the number of the students right now about 27,000. 390 students, and we have the staff is 2,011, and we have 12 faculty and with 146 study program. I think is a very big opportunity, very good opportunity also for us to join with this program, because the vision of our university to be innovative, independent, and leading socio-technopreneurial university in the global level. That's why internationalization is very important. This is part of our focus to be one of the good university in the world. Right now, Shakwala University is still in the rank above 1,000 more. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned before, the international is very important. That's why when the Inholland University offer us to join with this program, we are very happy to join this program. Actually, our students have the information about how to be the international, so they can join together with this project. Because as we know that for the KS ranking indicators, international student ratio and international research network is very important. It will be about 15 or 20%. The value of the international is come from the internationalization. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I just want to inform you a little bit about how our university connect with the Inholland University. At the beginning in 2019 to 2028, we have the Erasmus project that called Indoped project. This is the pedagogic, introduce the pedagogic system in Europe countries, in several countries from Europe and in several countries Indonesia. And Europe is one of the university is in Holland. They introduce the way of teaching, the pedagogic methods for the STEM study program in Indonesia. In our faculty or university, there are 3 methods that we take for this kind of the activities. This is project hatchery, and also learning by teaching, and also one of the others is project market research. It will lead by the Eric Hendrik, and for this kind of the method of the teaching is 2 study program in our university. There is agribusiness and also one pedagogic faculty take this method to be applied for the student in the study program. Okay, next please. Hi, okay, for this project we have contact each other. There is staff mobility also from us, also visit the Inholland University, and also from Inholland University visit our university. And we have also the project meeting in Universitas Syahkuala in 2018. Several universities from Inholland come to our university, and we conduct several activity. For example, how to apply the pedagogic method in our department. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, beside the with Inholland University, our university also have the other project Erasmus that we call is DSAI, the Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. This project, this project is to establish the master program DSAI. It already 3 years in our university has the magister program with the SAI program, and with the university in Holland is university in Netherlands is with the Leiden University. So our rector and also the Leiden director from Leiden also have signed MOU for this collaboration. Okay. Okay. Now we start for the collaboration on international learning. Our partner Istvan and Jerun already explained a lot about this. Why I involved about this program at the time from Inholland informed about this program. They have the same program as informed before that with Canada. I'm not the from the agribusiness department, as I mentioned before that I'm a dean and also the coordinator of Erasmus program at Universitas Syahkuala. So we discussed at the time with the team from Inholland University about this project, and they said that this project with the subject is supply chains. As you know that in our faculty we have 8 departments. This is agribusiness, animal science, and soil science, and also animal husbandry, and we have also forestry. So after I look the curriculum for the supply chain is appropriate with the agribusiness. So I contact the lecturer from the agribusiness to discuss about about this project, and they said that the lecturer they teach for supply chain project. This is Pak Rahmadiansyah, and also Litna, and some other lecturers, Romano, and we have 4 lecturers at a time. So to develop this kind of the activity, as I mentioned, we always have the online meeting with the Zoom platform. As we know that we have time difference between Indonesia and Netherlands. Actually, we have Indonesia is at night at 8 o'clock, and in Netherlands at 3 o'clock. This is usually that we use this time for discussion. I think the discussion is very quite long time, because it's the first time also for us to have the collaboration between the other university with the online system. Actually, our university or our faculty, actually, we have also the online class. As we know, we have 2 study program, not in Banda Aceh, but in the remote areas, but in local. So the lecture not to go there, but the student get the lecture with the platform with the Zoom. So we have also the local online, not the international, but it's only common. Also, when we have the COVID, is little bit is common for us to have lecture with online system. But but now it's quite different. So the problem at the beginning is because Indonesia, as we know, that the new curriculum from our minister, we have the freedom learning independent of campus. For 1 semester, it should be 20 credit point. That is, I think, the first problem for us. When we asked the Inholland University, they said the meeting only for 2 weeks, so it's not available for our curriculum system, because with the freedom learning independent campus we have 4 months, should be 4 months meeting. So we have to calculate first about ECTS and our credit system. As we know that for our credit system, for 1 credit, it's mean that 170 hours. So if with 2 weeks, we cannot get 20 credit for the student. So that is the first problem. So that's why I have to discuss with the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs, and then I have to discuss with the head of department how we take this opportunity for our student to conduct the collaboration online international learning, because this is very good opportunity for us to be internationalization. So after we discuss with 2 weeks, from the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs and also from the head of the agribusiness, they agree to take for this 2 weeks, and it will be recognized to be 10 credit point, not 20, to be 10 credit point, and this kind of credit point they have to convert, because in our study program, I don't know, maybe different with the Europe, they have ECTS, maybe 1 subject 30 ECTS, but with our study program is with our university or Indonesia commonly, they have 3 SKS for 1 subject, or 2 SKS or 2 credit point for 1 subject. So if they have 10 credit recognized for this activity, it means only 5 subjects can be conferred. Which one is similar with the content of the curriculum. And that is already we handle it. And so at the end, the student can get the 10 credit points. So for our university, at the beginning, not many students take this. When we offer to the student at the beginning only 5, and then improve at the end, we get 30 students from our university join with this activity, and 37 students from Inholland University to get this collaboration online international learning. So we meet the challenge also the time between Indonesia and also in Netherlands. But I really concerned at the beginning is the ability of our student to speak English, because English is for our student is very difficult. That's really concern at the beginning. So we train the student to speak English and to make with familiar with English. Usually they speak Indonesia home, so we train them several weeks before we enter this international online collaboration on the international program. Okay, next. Okay, the good result for the activity, of course, we can get benefit. A lot of students, they are very happy. They want to get more. I think if we continue with this program, I think a lot of students want to join with this program after they got good result for their friends. Yeah, and also, as I mentioned before, to fit the project into the existing program. So now we have supply chain course in the agribusiness study program, and also they will take some of the subject related with the activity of the student to get 10 credit points. That how they fix that. So maybe also from the lecture, after they have this kind of the project they have already discussed, maybe they want to make the new subject is good based on this experience. And also with the collaboration, as we know that in our university, in our faculty, maybe the audience here, there are some from Indonesian lecture, they know that key indicator performance. So if we put the student, why at the beginning we always ask you, we should be this program 20 credit point, because if we put 10 credit point, the university or the institution not recognize this is part of the indicator, they can put the indicator for. That's why we at the beginning want to be this project not very short, but very long, so the student can get a 20 credit point. That maybe we can discuss for next how to make more credit point, maybe to make this project is longer, something like that. Okay, next. Okay, what is the lesson learned? Of course, here we have different culture between Indonesia and also with the Netherlands. With this project, the sensitivity of the lecture, they know each other, how they talk. Yeah, they be open right now, and also they can improve. This is very important thing. Yeah? They can improve the English, even though just I mentioned, we in our university there is a regulation. The student before they finish their study, they have TOEFL score is 470 minimum. Yeah, minimum 475, the minimum. If not, they cannot go to they cannot go to graduation day. So they have to take a course to get the score. By this program is very good. They can learn, even though it's very short time, to speak English. They have brave enough to speak with the other student from abroad. This is not easy for our student to make international collaboration because it's the first time. This very good experience for us. And also there are other things that can get not only knowledge but the way how they the skill of the presentation, and also they use the international online platform, yeah? And also the presentation material, they can work together. This is a very very good experience for our students to improve their knowledge, yeah? And also the critical thinking and problem solving, that I think have a lot benefit with this COIL program, with our study program. Okay, next. Okay, tips for our teacher. Of course, right now we try to editing the curriculum. This is one example. Right now is with the palm oil supply chains, and maybe as we know that palm oil in Indonesia, in Aceh actually is the producer, and how the Netherlands also the consumer, how they make, fix each other. Yeah. Also, we should provide the guidelines at the beginning. As this is the at the beginning of the program, maybe next time we can improve, yeah, improve the guideline for the student to get more information, so they have a very big beneficial. Also, assessment is very important. Assessing to make adjustment between each other, so they can improve for the material for next time. Next, yeah. As I mentioned that now between our university and also in Inholland University, we want to make more collaboration, because this is the week of Indonesian and Netherlands education and research. It's good also for us just to inform you, beside the COIL collaboration online international learning, we have already started to make further collaboration with Netherlands, as our meeting in the Kalimantan with the Eric. As we know that we have the forest, other land use. This is part of the project that we can make for research, to make our two university can collaborate each other. And also we try to make Erasmus project to apply for the climate change. Also maybe we can make to join with the COIL collaborative online international. As just to inform you, before we have collaboration with I don't know, one of university in Greece, opening. Opening. This is all online. Yeah. Also, one university in other country in Italy, they try to make collaboration with online teaching each other, like the COIL program, like we have today. So we can apply this kind of project with Erasmus. Maybe this is good idea to collaborate with several university in Europe, how to make the program with the COIL program, collaboration online international learning, with some university in Indonesia and some university in Europe. We can apply with the Erasmus program. Okay, next. Next. Okay, yeah, this is also, as I mentioned, the academic collaboration that we can make. That with this collaboration, we hope that the both university education will be both the educational environment. It will reflect the role of institutional environment. Okay. Next. Next. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. If you have any question, please. Thank you.
Sure they did.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there there any questions? Yes.
No, I cannot access it. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Over there.
Okay. Well, this is someone that wants to connect for COIL, so please. Standard is still in the Netherlands, so for us it's not really an option, but for the Indonesian one.
Yes.
I think that if you look at courses where you might need real life experience, it depends a bit what you mean by real life, because I think a lot of our life is also now with our phones. Sorry, a lot of our life is also with our phones, but you are connecting different realities to each other. So it's important to take something that is a reality, for example, the palm issue in Indonesia, and to discover what is real there, and also to look at it from the Dutch perspective and perhaps connect it to what is going on in that same setting over here. So I do think it is real life, but it is not in person and offline. It is more online. Sometimes it is combined with an offline presence, a visit or another form of mobility, but this can also be quite exclusive because it can be only for a few students. And if you do that with 70 students and you ask them to pay for it, then it's also a bit of a different question. So I think the virtual part, a lot of our work nowadays is also virtual. So that does make it real life. And finally, maybe from my side, I think it's also the fact that you are working on different competencies that have values to different courses. So for example, digital skills development, digital skills development, also intercultural sensitivity, language improvement, and also subject knowledge. So there are different skills, different competencies that you can learn.
So this other question on how to prepare your students for the online meetings. This question is a very interesting one because we also spoke about it and Sam also discussed preparation in terms of the English language, of course. We have prepared our students, but we haven't spent an awful lot of time preparing them for the COIL. We also think that it's an experience, it's a kind of a risk they have to take. Of course, you can tell them that the students they're going to meet have a different background, that they should be prepared for that. But yeah, I think you should find a balance between preparing them and letting them have the experience firsthand themselves. And of course, afterwards you can evaluate have they had enough preparation or not. Maybe Sam, you can add on that. Looking back, if you look at the reactions of your students, do you feel they have been prepared enough for the differences between them and our students?
Maybe giving Sam another second to think about it. In the introduction, we asked the students to really come prepared with a small story from their own life. Maybe their hobby, their sport, introducing themselves to these students on the other side of the screen. And that's a real life getting to know each other without going into the theoretics of the supply chain analysis. And since we said the cultural learning is the most important learning, even much more so than fully understanding the supply chain of palm oil, the cultural learning, that's where they picked up the most.
Maybe I'll take a look at the question from Jos Thomassen. I prefer to stand still, sorry for that. Can you tell from your experience what difference to be expected between COIL in the curriculum and extracurriculum? I think there are quite a lot of differences, because if it's extracurricular, it usually is more difficult to assess and to give grades to, but you usually have more motivated students because they sign up for it and they do something extra, and they also feel that they are doing something extra. And that is a benefit on one hand, and on the other hand, we believe to us that, and I think in Holland that's the same, that it should be more part of the curriculum, because then you're not just having the students who want an international experience, but you're also having the students that maybe don't want it, but would really need it according to perhaps the lecturers and the course requirements. So if you look at the curriculum or as an elective, I think sometimes COIL start out in a pilot form. You try out different things, you see if it works, and then on the basis of that, you might for the next year include more people, get it aligned with your curriculum, get it aligned with the learning goals, and also formalize that process in the curriculum.
Actually, in the COIL we're doing with USK, we see room for further development to maybe have an additional meeting later on in the semester where we're going to look in the coming months at ways to expand the existing COIL. So, yeah, so of course, and when you do something in the formal curriculum, it might also require teachers, or let's say not just in a subject, but it's really for everyone in the year. It might require lecturers and teachers to talk to other stakeholders, such as management and such as educational advisors or any kind of curriculum committee. And those can be somewhat obstacles because you first have to explain and show it. And then you have to deal with some questions because it's new and why should we do it? So that takes some steps in explaining. And to us, we have found that it's really good to shape internationalization related to the learning outcomes of the students and also use their experiences to convince other stakeholders rather than let's just write out as a lecturer saying we should do this. Having 30 students saying that it was valuable to them or that they learned something is much better argument. Okay.
Can you answer?
Oh, yeah, come.
Okay. Maybe for both Samadi and from you here, just a simple question. Basically, what was the most, not difficult maybe, but most surprise experience that you found so far in this COIL collaboration? Maybe most surprise things that you found, and then maybe how you will learn and solve about it, maybe, if that's a problem. Thank you.
Well, maybe that, I don't know how many thousand kilometers away, your life or your profession is very comparable when you talk about your work, about the challenges of your students and the challenges of the work in education. There's more similarities than differences sometimes that I found interesting to see, to notice.
To me, it was not surprising, but good to see that the students participating in this program were really committed to participate. Maybe some more active than others, but many really participated and came out with a learning that they had not expected from the first 2 weeks of the semester, namely all the cultural aspects of it and the difficulties that they had overcome in those two weeks. So, very positive feedback from the students.
Yeah, from my side, if I look at the COILs I've done as a lecturer, sometimes the small intercultural differences that you see in behavior become very apparent and surprising. So in the Netherlands, we used to say to our students during COVID time, switch on your camera. because then we see you and it's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
And in South Africa, where we were working with, actually they had a completely opposite message. Switch off your camera so that we can all see the lecture and you don't take too much bandwidth. So these things are things that always capture you, and you think, oh yeah, actually we have some local aspects that are different and that we have to take into account. And another thing that surprises me in that is that as a lecturer, it's also a new experience, and it's very motivating also for lecturers to build up that relationship. There's other forms of internationalization for lecturers, can be going to a conference or visiting universities, which is a nice tour and everything. But this is real collaboration, and something is also on the line. If it doesn't work out, then you will be asked as a lecturer, well, why did you organize this? Or why is this done like this? So in that sense, I think it's very good for lecturers, and that surprise, still surprising.
It's still surprising.
Yes.
Somebody stop something? Did he hear? Did he hear us?
Sam,
Sorry.
did you hear the question? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, yeah.
Figure it out. Sam, can you hear us? You're on
Oh,
mute.
here. Yeah. What is the question? That yeah, of course that what was surprised that our students have the self-confidence. What I don't know before, they can interact with the student from Netherlands, and they feel very happy because it's the first experience for them to have the collaboration, international collaboration class. It's mean that they feel that it's very short for them. They want to make this activity is longer, so they can get lot experience with this kind of this project, with this COIL project. And I think to get the maximal result for the COIL project, of course, every institution, even though this is online system, online, but each the faculty or each the study program of each the class, it should be have the assistant that control for the student. We don't ask the student to be free, but we should already control, even though this is online, but we should make the student that they have already, they should be the control. I think this the most important thing if we make the COIL program. Then we have also the clear guidelines for the student. I think that's for my point.
Finish. Yeah. Do you want to close?
Well, as I started the session, then I will close. First of all, thank you online for listening, for asking your questions, and perhaps also for creating connections to set up your own COIL collaboration. Do not be afraid to ask us for advice. Yeah? People become experts very quickly, so they know now how it is to work with Indonesia, and I know more in general how to set up COIL projects. Thank you to Winner for this session, and we hope you have a good rest of the afternoon or rest of the day if you are in the Netherlands. Thank you, and thank you also to our Indonesian guest, Samadi, for his contributions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you.